Mesrop Mashdots was born in 362 AD in a small provincial town in the Tehran region of ancient Armenia, in what is now eastern Turkey. His family was of modest, noble status. He was educated, multilingual, fluent in Armenian, Greek, Persian, Syriac, and Georgian, and by all accounts, intellectually formidable. In 301 AD, Armenia became the first Christian nation in the world. We covered this in the last two videos about the martyrdom of the women in Armenia and how Gregory built the church that withstood every attack on it over 1700 years. It seemed history had moved on, except it didn't quite work the way many assume. Not because they were illiterate, not because they didn't have access to one, but because the Bible didn't exist in their language. It was in Greek, it was in Syriac, languages that most ordinary Armenians couldn't read, which means that for a century, Armenia was Christian in name, in practice, and in identity. They died for this faith they had, but they were doing all of it through translators, intermediaries, through priests who read words in a foreign language and then explained them in Armenian. They could not encounter their scripture directly, in their own voice, in their own tongue. This could be a precarious situation, and a monk named Mesrop Mashdots understood that more clearly than anyone around him. So he decided to finish what Gregory started. He didn't translate the Bible into Armenian. He invented an entire alphabet first so that he could. He didn't start out as a monk. Instead, he served in the Armenian royal court as a scribe and secretary, next in the military. Then around age 30, he left all of it and withdrew to a monastery. Eventually, Mesrop became a missionary, traveling through the more remote regions of Armenia, trying to bring Christianity to communities that had barely been touched by it. And this is where the problem became impossible to ignore. He was preaching and explaining scripture to people in Armenian, but when he opened the text, when he wanted to show them the actual words, there was nothing to show them. The Bible was Greek or Syriac. He was asking them to believe in something they could never independently read, verify, or encounter for themselves. For a missionary trying to build genuine faith, not just compliance, but actual understanding, that was a huge problem. And in 387 AD, it became a political one as well. Armenia was partitioned, split between the Byzantine Empire in the west and the Sassanid Persian Empire in the east. The country had no political independence, and both empires were actively trying to absorb Armenian identity into their own. Byzantium pushing Greek, Persia pushing Persian and Zoroastrianism. People with no written language of their own were extremely vulnerable to that kind of pressure. If you can be made to read, worship, and think in someone else's language, you can eventually be made to become someone else entirely. Mesrop saw what was coming, and he went to work. Here is something almost no one mentions when they tell Mesrop's story. He didn't invent the Armenian alphabet on the first try. Around 404 AD, an Armenian bishop named Daniel, based in Mesopotamia, had already been working on a script for the Armenian language, and he had developed a set of letters. When word reached King Ramshapa of Armenia, he immediately sent a messenger to retrieve it. When the script arrived, Mesrop and the Catholicos Sahak Partev examined it. They tested its use first by teaching it to the children for 2 years. It didn't work. The Armenian language has a specific and complex set of sounds, consonants, and vowels that don't exist in Greek, Syriac, or Persian. So Daniel's script, built on existing models, couldn't capture them accurately. Although close, not good enough. A script that can't represent your language accurately is still a script that belongs to someone else. So Mesrop threw it out after the king had already endorsed it and schools were using it, and he went back to the drawing board and traveled to Edessa in what is now southeastern Turkey, and Samosata, consulted linguists, bishops, scholars, studied how other alphabets were constructed, how letters were shaped, how sounds were mapped into syllables, and then, according to his biographer Corian, his disciple who was present for all of this, he received a vision. Corian writes that after long struggle and frustration, God showed Mesrop the letters. Seeing them clearly, he immediately wrote them down, named them, ordered them, and determined their syllabic system in a single sitting. Whether you take that literally or not, what Corian describes is a breakthrough that came after years of preparation, failed attempts, travel, study, consultation, and sustained effort. The Armenian alphabet Mashdots created had 36 letters. 2 more were added in the 12th century. It has been in continuous use for over 1,600 years and has changed so little in that time that an Armenian today can read a manuscript from the 5th century. Linguists have described it as one of the most phonetically precise writing systems ever devised for its time. Every sound in the Armenian language, including sounds that had no equivalent in Greek or Syriac, had a letter. Nothing was approximated. Nothing was borrowed. It was built from the ground up specifically for Armenian. And here's an extraordinary detail that almost nobody who tells this story outside of a few theological circles mentions. The first letter of the original Armenian alphabet is Op. In Armenian, Op stands for Atzvats, God. The last letter is Ke. Ke stands for Christos, Christ. The alphabet begins with God and ends with Christ. That was not an accident. That was Mesrop telling us exactly what this alphabet was for and solidifying the Christian faith into the Armenian identity. It was a theological document as much as a linguistic one. The first sentence ever written in Armenian, the first words Mesrop wrote down using the new script, was a line from the book of Proverbs. To know wisdom and instruction, to perceive the words of understanding. Again, not an accident. The first words in their language were about the purpose of language itself, about knowing, about perceiving, about understanding directly, without a translator standing between you and the text. Once the alphabet existed, Mesrop moved immediately. The Bible was translated into Armenian. The first systematic translation, done by Mesrop, Sahak Partev, and a team of scholars they trained, was completed in the early 5th century. Scholars later called it the Golden Version. It was translated so precisely, so beautifully, that it is still considered one of the finest Bible translations ever produced, not just in Armenian history, but in the history of biblical translation generally. Then Mesrop founded schools, not just in the Armenian capital, across the country. He traveled personally into remote regions, border territories, communities that had never had formal education. He trained teachers, established curricula, made sure the alphabet reached people who would never come to the capital on their own. And he didn't stop with Armenia. This is the other part of the story that gets a little controversial. Mesrop reportedly created alphabets for 2 of Armenia's neighbors, Georgia and Caucasian Albania. Both were Christian nations with the same problem Armenia had faced. Their people couldn't read their own scriptures because no writing system existed for their languages. According to this theory, Mesrop went to Georgia and worked with local scholars. He created the Georgian alphabet, Mekedruli, which is still in use today. Then he went further to the Caucasian Albanians and created a script for them as well. 1 man, 3 alphabets, allegedly, so please don't come for me, Georgians. All built to do the same thing. Make it impossible for an empire to take your faith from you by controlling the language it was written in. He understood 1,500 years before the Soviet Union existed that language is the last fortress, that if you can read your own scripture, pray in your own words, teach your children in your own tongue, no occupation can fully overtake you. You can lose your land, you can lose your political independence, but if your language survives, something essential of you survives with it. Let's look at this a bit further. Armenia became Christian in 301 AD. Mesrop created the alphabet in 405 AD. That is a 104-year gap. In that 104 years, Armenians had already defended their faith at the cost of thousands of lives. The women we spoke about in the first video, Hripsmi Gayane and the others, died before there was even a cathedral. The people who fought the Persians at the Battle of Avarir died for their faith. They believed deeply enough to die for something they had never independently encountered, in their own words. That's fascinating, because we live in a world where people routinely abandon beliefs the moment they become inconvenient, where faith is treated as optional, personal, private, something you hold loosely and set down when it costs too much. these people held it without even having direct access to the text. What Mesrop did, giving them the alphabet, was give them ownership, direct access, the ability to encounter their faith personally without a middleman. That's the difference between faith as inheritance and faith as conviction. The Armenian alphabet has survived everything that Mesrop predicted it would need to survive: Persian occupation, Arab conquest, Mongol invasion, Ottoman rule, Soviet atheism, genocide that killed 1.5 million people and scattered the rest across the world. In Armenian homes around the world, in the diaspora, in apartments in Los Angeles and Paris, in Beirut and Sydney, you will often find the Armenian alphabet displayed on the wall, framed, decorated, sometimes jeweled, treated not as a learning tool, but as a sacred object, because it is. It is the thing that kept them Armenian when everything else was taken. Mesrop Mashdots died in 440 AD in Vakashapat, the same city where Etchmiadzin stands, the same city where Gregory had his vision, the same city where 37 women had once hidden in an abandoned wine press and refused to comply. He was buried in the village of Ashakan. A church was built over his grave 3 years later. It still stands. People still make pilgrimages there. In front of the Montanararan, Armenia's great repository of ancient manuscripts in Yerevan, officially named the Mesrop Mashdots Institute of Ancient Manuscripts, there is a statue of Mesrop standing with one of his students. The institute holds tens of thousands of handwritten Armenian manuscripts, every single one of them written in the letters he gave them. Gregory the Illuminator converted a king and built a church. Mesrop Mashdots gave a people the ability to carry their faith in their own hands. Both were necessary, both were, at multiple moments, seemingly impossible, but both defied the odds and stand as a testimony into the present day. This is part of an ongoing series on the faith and history of Armenia in the broader Caucasus region. There's one more video in this series to come, the Armenian genocide. Subscribe so you're there when it drops, and if you missed the first 2 videos in this series, the woman who set Armenia's conversion in motion and the cathedral that should not exist, those are linked in the description.